Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sessions with Paola Rodriguez. I'm a Latina sex therapist in the beautiful city of Miami. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel. And if you know anybody that could use this beautiful information, please share with them. I have today with me Gonzalo Salinas. I'm so excited to introduce them, you guys. Gonzalo is a writer, a researcher, and a sex coach. He was born in Lima, Peru, and relocated in 2003 to the US. He studied literature and has trained in a whole bunch of places, the Robin Research International and the Landmark Educational Institute. He also trained at the International School of Temple Arts and got certified as a holistic sexuality trainer with the Satini model. In 2013, he began his training in masculine development at the Mankind Project, where he learned about male tribal initiations and men's circle. That same year, he began his path as a sex educator, working as an assistant to a Tantra teacher. And from then, he began training in workshops, retreats of Tantra, Taoist sexuality, and sacred sexuality. He began coaching men, helping them overcome porn addiction. He published his book, Conquering Porn Addiction, and he has a practice focusing on issues of embodiment, healing sexuality, rekindling desire, and reconnecting with pleasure. Gonzalo, welcome. So long, but I needed to say it all because he's amazing. Guys, so I am a big fan of people who open spaces for men. As Latinos, at least I'm Colombian, and in my culture, men that talk about emotions, no sea marica, no llore, right? So it is so amazing to see someone model not only vulnerability, but open spaces for men. So tell me, Gonzalo, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do the work that you do.
Well, the first thing, before I even start, thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Of course.
And what really moved me to start all this path was my own healing. And this is something that moved most of the people that are, with a true vocation to bring light in the field of sexuality, I mean, I tell the whole story on my book, Conquering Porn Addiction, but it was almost 2 decades of a severe addiction to pornography. And I was able to overcome that addiction. And when I published my book, Conquering Porn Addiction, I tell the whole story. Is probably like 30% of my personal story and 70% tools that men can actually start implementing today to heal from that addiction. So what moved me to do this whole thing is my own healing.
Wow. And I wanna, so Gonzalo, he's a sex coach. I'm a sex therapist, but I like the fact that we all come together to really help people the best way that we can. So Gonzalo, what would you say when you think about porn addiction? How would you define it? How would someone know that they're actually addicted to porn?
So when it comes to porn addiction, it's a difficult thing to define, or actually to make a clear line, because first of all is a taboo topic. Nobody talks about it. It's so covered in shame that people don't even want to talk about it, And it might be people that are really deep down the rabbit hole, but still they don't ask for help because they are so embarrassed. They feel so embarrassed, and they have the tendency to ask for help only when the bomb explodes in their faces, something like that.
And not only that, but I think as Latino men, right, like you are taught to provide, to protect. One of the biggest issues that I run in my practice when I work with couples is that the man says, well, I didn't want to tell you about this issue because I didn't want to worry you, because I didn't want to stress you out, because I didn't want, I'd rather carry it on my own. But as women, the one thing that we're missing is that vulnerability, right? For you to be able to open up, because then we feel very alone. And we want to be there to support. And shame, oh my God, you and I can probably have a whole conversation about shame. When shame runs the show, there's no way you can connect to yourself or the other because you're constantly in a state of lack of connection, of distance, right? And, I find it really interesting when you talk about your book and you say, not only what you went through, right, your story, but also when you talked a little bit about, I give people skills. What do you think are some skills that the guys out there need to start with, need to know? How do they become a little bit aware that, maybe this is compulsive use of porn? What would you say? What would you like them to know?
So, and also tapping on the previous question, there are certain specific behaviors that come with addiction. Not only addiction to pornography, but addiction to anything. It can be a substance, it can be a behavior. At the end of the day, what you are doing is kidnapping the reward system in the brain that produces dopamine, and then you have a whole cascade of events and consequences that come because of that addiction. But the number one thing that is blatant in your life is actually losing your own willpower. That's for sure. That's the number one thing. And when it comes to tools, the first tool that you must have in order to solve this problem is awareness. You have to be aware of the problem. And unfortunately, when it comes to porn, most of men that have a high consumption of porn, they are in denial. And they will tell you a story like, hey, I watch porn here and there, but I'm not an addict, or stuff like that. Something along those lines. And they don't know that porn is extremely addictive, because porn, especially the way is now in the high-speed internet, unlimited, free, it has completely hacked the human brain. So, in other words, thousands of years of evolution have not prepared us to this level of sexual stimulation. And this is what men out there are receiving for free. They are getting massive amounts of chemical rewards just for masturbating and clicking into a screen. And this is going to have massive consequences in our world.
Yes, and I think you talked about two things, right? Because there's something about compulsive use and awareness, and for some reason the word surrender came to mind, right? And even though we come from different schools of thought, right? Because in the sex therapy world, we think of more like compulsivity, but you talked about loss of control. I think that would be something that I really resonate with. And then also, you guys, you mentioned this earlier, Gonzalo, when we talked a little bit about how many of you out there are treating depression. And we know in our culture, in our Latina culture, right? Like, I'm Colombian, and Luis comes, oh, papi, me duele el brazo, my arm hurts. And that says, well, Pedro is missing 2 legs. What are you complaining about, right? So we undermine certain feelings, emotions. And if a man is depressed, they're less likely to take medication because I don't want to depend on anything, but then they hit the bottle and the porn. And, I was reading an article not too long ago, Gonzalo, that talked a little bit about the porn use has, arose in the pandemic. Of course, we're home, but also, facing mortality. When we face mortality, sex is a way to keep us alive. So it's really interesting. I agree with you that this is something that's happening quickly. It is, if you guys think about it, it's a substance where you don't have to leave the house, so much stimulation, right? And understanding when it is a problem by becoming aware and asking for help. So in my practice, there's a certain presentation that I see when somebody comes in and they say, Paola, I think I have a problem with porn. So we start to unpack. I often notice that there's a history of trauma. The child maybe had abandonment issues when they were young, or something really traumatic happened in childhood. Before the age of 6, it is more impactful. And so they find a magazine, they start to fantasize about the teacher, They get on the internet, and this becomes fantasy is a way to cope with their trauma, imagination, going from, right? It helps you survive. Depression, I also see a lot. Rejection when they're teenagers, because rejection as a teen is like, oh, especially if you have a household where you don't have a lot of unconditional acceptance, susceptible to boredom, and also I have a lot of guys that use porn to de-stress, right? So I wonder, what do you see? Is there a certain presentation that you see in your practice that, you see, oh, this person, this is the presentation that I see, kind of like the way that I see it in mine?
I see a constant of a primal wound. As Carl Jung explains, this primal wound is the origin of many other things that, is almost like a cascade that starts happening because of that thing. So in other words, the addictive behavior towards porn that is here is not the real problem. This is a scapegoat, They're running away from this problem that they're not capable of facing. They are so afraid to face that trauma, that conflict that they didn't resolve in the past, or whatever happened in the childhood, whatever happened in their story, and it's so painful. And that actually needs a cleansing program, So working with my clients, I go and I start kind of like the Sherlock Holmes job, exploring what's going on in the past. And believe me, the kind of stories that I see are really, really like strong stories, like I see men that are coming from really difficult spaces. And I tell them that it's okay, like creating this safe container for them to understand that this is actually part of being a human, that's part of the human experience. So obviously we take into account several elements, but at the end of the day, going back to heal the inner self is going to have repercussion with every single area of the life of that man.
I love that. You guys listen to that. Being a human being can be really hard, right? But there are people out there like us that can really normalize that experience and help you move through a really difficult world sometimes. I wonder, so Gonzalo, in my practice, sometimes, porn can be used in healthy ways, right? I think a lot of the times it's the behavior around the porn. If the guy's in the basement watching 3 hours of porn and he hasn't connected with his wife, that's gonna be a problem. I also see in same-sex relationships, because same-sex relationships don't really have a framework, right? Like now things are changing a bit, but a lot of people grew up not seeing a commercial of a gay couple, not seeing anything, that portrayed that idea. So I wonder, sometimes in same-sex relationships or gay boys, right, watching gay porn is the first time that they see intimacy between two people that they can relate to. Do you find that sex or porn can be healthy in some situations?
You have to make sure that you understand that the brain has a characteristic that is called neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is basically that your brain is going to adapt to whatever circumstance you put it through, So when it comes to stimulation with porn, porn is going to start activating the reward system and releasing massive amounts of dopamine. That has massive consequences in the body. Neuroplasticity programs the brain. So using porn to stimulate is going to program the body to be attached to that stimulation, because when you attach to, people have the tendency to bond to what you orgasm to, So I have no moral concern when it comes to the use of porn. I respect the sovereignty of people to use, But most of men don't know that porn is highly addictive. It's highly addictive. And you were talking about frame, and every single reality has a frame where you come from. And most of men, they just come out of curiosity, out of, I want to like kill stress, or I have nothing to do, or I'm bored. From that frame to watch porn. And it's highly addictive because you start getting rewards just for clicking into a computer. Plus, I work a lot with integrity, and I follow principles of sacred sexuality. And whenever you start studying sacred sexuality, it always brings you to a sex space in the present. And porn is always taking you out of your body and to the past. And just that is, you're starting with the wrong foot, So it's not, I don't have anything against this, but I can definitely recommend better sexual practices.
Okay, good, guys. So what we're learning is that we really have to be awareness, consumption, understanding what you're getting yourself into. And I think, you're going to get different schools of thought, but I do agree that in order for us to be able to connect with someone, we have to be extremely present. Gonzalo, thank you so much. To tell me, how can people find you? Give us social media, upcoming workshops. We talked about your book, Conquering Porn Addiction. How can people find more information about you and the wonderful work that you do?
So I mostly work in the Spanish-speaking market,
En español, gente.
Yeah. And soon I'm going to do a course, a 6-week course for women with my business partner, Andres Bernaza. We're going to do a workshop for women that want to understand men emotionally and sexually. So this is going to be by the end of March 2022. And, my coaching practice. My coaching practice, I do it in English and Spanish. And if somebody is interested in my work about pornography addiction, how you can overcome this problem, they can find my book on Amazon. Okay. Conquering
and
Porn
Instagram,
Addiction.
What is your Instagram?
My Instagram is Gonzalo Salinas 80.
Okay, awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And Gonzalo, thank you. Mil gracias. Gente, we'll see you soon. Bienvenidos. I'll see you in the next episode of Sessions.